Commander Juwu Park stared at the holographic display showing Earth's fallen cities. The blue glow illuminated her tired face as she floated in the darkness of her small ship's cockpit. 6 months had passed since the Krell invasion. 6 months since she'd watched Earth fall. Final systems check complete, announced the ship's eye. Quantum camouflage operational. Thank you, Juwu whispered, though no one could hear her now. The experimental vessel Firefly was humanity's last secret weapon. A ship that could vanish completely from all detection systems. She remembered the day of the attack. The Krell ships had appeared without warning, their massive vessels darkening skies worldwide. Earth's defenses crumbled within hours. As military command realized defeat was inevitable, they executed their final contingency plan, launching Juwu in the only vessel that might escape detection. "Your mission is survival," Admiral Kang had told her. "And then, when the time is right, resistance." The memory made her chest tighten. The Admiral was surely dead now, along with billions of others. Juwu checked the ship's long-range scanners. The Krell patrol fleet moved through the asteroid belt, following their predictable search pattern. They still hunted for human survivors, but their efforts had grown routine and careless. They believed their victory complete. "They think we're finished," Juwu said to herself. "That's their first mistake." She guided Firefly silently toward the patrol's path. The quantum camouflage bent light and energy around the small vessel, making it undetectable to even the most advanced Krell technology. Weeks of careful observation had taught Juwu the patrol schedules and communication protocols. As she drew closer, she activated the ship's passive scanner, recording everything about the Krell vessels, their energy signatures, shield frequencies, and communication patterns. Each bit of data might reveal a weakness. The lead Krell ship passed so close that Juwu could see the patterns on its hull through her viewport. She held her breath despite knowing they couldn't detect her. Old habits died hard. Her thoughts drifted to the training that had prepared her for this mission. As Earth's top military strategist, she had studied every alien encounter in human history. The Krell had remained mysterious until their sudden attack, but now she could observe them directly. The patrol moved on, unaware of her presence. Juwu continued her course toward Mars, where the Krell had established their main base of operations for the solar system. Intelligence gathered before Earth's fall suggested they were stripping the planet of resources. 3 days later, Firefly slipped into Mars orbit. Below, enormous Krell mining operations scared the red planet's surface. Massive ships carried resources to waiting transport vessels. "Beginning deep scan," Juwu said, activating Firefly's most sensitive instruments. The data flowed across her screens. The Krell operated with remarkable efficiency, but their patterns were rigid and predictable. Juwu noticed something else. Their command structure appeared completely hierarchical. Lower-ranking Krell never acted without explicit orders from above. "That could be useful," she muttered, marking the observation in her tactical database. A transmission caught her attention. She directed the ship's computers to decode it. "Interesting," she said as the translation appeared. The message detailed the deployment of the Krell fleet throughout the solar system. Most forces were concentrated around Earth and Mars, but Jupiter's moons remained largely unguarded. Juwu began forming a plan. The Krell maintained a fuel processing facility on Callisto, Jupiter's second-largest moon. If she could disrupt their fuel supply, she plotted a course for Jupiter, careful to avoid detection as she passed through the heavily monitored asteroid belt. The journey took weeks, but Firefly's supplies were designed for long-term missions. When she finally reached Callisto, Juwu was surprised by the minimal security. The Krell clearly believed no threats remained. "Perfect," she whispered. Firefly carried a limited arsenal, mostly designed for self-defense, but Juwu had something better than weapons: knowledge. She guided her ship to the facility's main power coupling. According to her scans, the Krell used a plasma containment system similar to early human designs. Such systems had a critical flaw. If the cooling regulators were disabled in sequence rather than simultaneously, they would trigger a cascade failure. Jiwoo deployed a small remote drone from Firefly. The tiny machine, also protected by quantum camouflage technology, floated toward the facility. "Begin sequence," she ordered. The drone targeted the cooling regulators one by one. As the first regulator failed, Krell workers rushed to repair it. While they focused there, the second regulator failed, then the third. Alarms blared across the facility. Jiwoo watched as confusion spread among the workers. Without immediate orders from superiors, they hesitated, following procedures rather than adapting. The cascade failure began. Jiwoo pulled Firefly back to a safe distance as the facility's power core overloaded. The explosion was surprisingly contained. The Krell had safety systems, but the damage was done. The facility would be inoperative for months. As she piloted away from Callisto, Jiwoo allowed herself a small smile. This was just the beginning. One human in one ship might seem insignificant against the might of the Krell Dominion, but they had underestimated humanity before. Her next target would be their communication relay in Saturn's rings. After that, perhaps their navigation beacon near Neptune. She opened her personal log and recorded a message. Day 183 since Earth's fall. First strike successful. The Krell believe humanity is defeated, but they're wrong. They conquered our planet, but they missed something important. Humans never stop fighting. Not while one of us remains. Jiwoo closed the log and set course for Saturn. The Firefly vanished among the stars, a ghost that the Krell never saw coming. The supply ship drifted silently through Saturn's rings, its hull gleaming in the distant sunlight. Inside, Krell workers moved with mechanical precision, unaware they were being watched. Jiwoo tracked the vessel through Firefly's advanced sensors, recording every detail. This was her 5th observation mission this month. Each time, she learned more about Krell operations. Patrol schedule confirmed, she muttered to herself, noting how the guards changed positions exactly every 4 hours. The Krell valued order and predictability, a weakness she could exploit. 3 months had passed since her first strike at Callisto. Since then, she had conducted 7 more operations across the outer planets. Each attack appeared to the Krell as equipment failure or natural accidents. A cooling system malfunction here, a navigation error there. Nothing that suggested human involvement. Jiwoo checked her tactical map. The supply route she monitored connected a major Krell fuel processing center on Titan to their military outposts throughout the system. Disrupting it would force them to divert resources from Earth. "Time to move," she said, guiding Firefly closer to the supply ship. The quantum camouflage system hummed softly as it bent light and energy around the vessel. Jiwoo had named this technology Ghost Mode in her personal logs. It seemed fitting. She had become a ghost haunting the Krell Empire. When Firefly came within 50 meters of the supply ship, Jiwoo deployed a specialized drone. The tiny machine attached itself to the Krell vessel's communication array and began downloading data. Jiwoo watched her screen as Krell shipping manifests, fleet positions, and communication protocols filled her database. Each piece of information was a potential weapon. "What have we here?" she whispered as a security file appeared. It contained reports about recent equipment failures throughout Krell territory. The High Command had launched an investigation, but their conclusion made her smile. Faulty manufacturing in a recent batch of control systems. They still didn't suspect human involvement. The drone completed its download and returned to Firefly. Jiwoo studied the new information, focusing on the supply ship's cargo, reactor cores for the Krell base on Enceladus. Without them, the base would need to operate on backup power for weeks. Jiwoo deployed a second drone, this one programmed with a very specific task. It slipped through a maintenance hatch and navigated to the ship's engine control systems. There it made a subtle modification to the navigation parameters, just enough to send the ship slightly off course. By the time the Krell noticed, they would drift too close to Saturn's gravity well. They would correct eventually, but the delay would disrupt their delivery schedule, and force other adjustments throughout their supply chain. Small cuts, Juwu reminded herself. 1,000 small cuts. She guided Firefly away, already planning her next target. 2 weeks later, Juwu hovered near a Krell ammunition depot orbiting Neptune. This would be her most dangerous mission yet, not a subtle sabotage, but a direct strike. The depot stored specialized weapons used against resistance fighters on the outer moons. Intelligence she had gathered indicated the Krell planned to ship these weapons to Earth to put down growing unrest in former human cities. Not if I can help it, Juwu said, checking Firefly's limited weapons systems. Her plan relied on perfect timing. The depot's defense grid cycled every 12 minutes, creating a 3-second window when the overlapping energy fields reset. In those 3 seconds, Firefly would fire precisely targeted missiles at the depot's main power hub. Juwu waited, watching the seconds count down. Her hands gripped the controls tightly. "Now," she whispered, and pressed the launch button. 2 missiles shot from Firefly, still hidden by the quantum camouflage. They crossed the distance in moments and struck their target just as the defense grid came back online. The explosion was contained by the depot's emergency systems, but the damage was done. Without main power, the ammunition would need to be manually loaded, a process that would take days rather than hours. As Juwu retreated, she intercepted Krell communications. Their confusion was evident even through the mechanical translation. "Command, we have experienced another critical failure. Requesting immediate technical support. Report details. Is this related to previous system malfunctions?" "Unknown, Command. Awaiting your instructions before proceeding." Juwu noted how the Krell officers refused to take action without explicit orders from above. This pattern appeared consistently in every encounter she observed. The rigid hierarchy that made the Krell so efficient also made them vulnerable when faced with unexpected situations. Back in safe space, Juwu reviewed her collection of Krell data. Over months of operations, she had assembled a detailed picture of their command structure. All decisions flowed from central command outward. Lower ranks executed orders exactly as given, with no room for interpretation or initiative. Most importantly, she had discovered their communication network relied on specialized relay stations positioned throughout the solar system. If those relays were disabled, entire sections of the Krell military would be cut off from command. Juwu pulled up the star chart showing these relay positions. There were 12 major stations. Disabling even a few would create significant confusion. She marked the nearest relay as her next target and set course. As Firefly accelerated toward its destination, Juwu allowed herself a moment of reflection. 6 months ago, she had been one person in a desperate mission of survival. Now, her actions were reshaping the strategic landscape of the solar system. Reports smuggled from Earth indicated the Krell were struggling to maintain control. Supply shortages caused by her operations had weakened their position. Resistance groups were forming in the shadows. They never saw it coming. Juwu said to the empty cockpit, "One human, one ship." She checked her weapons and stealth systems. The quantum camouflage was operating at peak efficiency. The Krell still had no defense against a ghost they couldn't see. Juwu smiled as Firefly disappeared into the void, headed toward the next target in her private war against an empire. In the dimly lit basement of what was once a human restaurant, 20 people gathered in hushed silence. The place was in New Seoul, one of the largest human settlements still standing after the Krell occupation. A man named Hyunho set down a makeshift radio and looked at the eager faces around him. "It happened again," he whispered. "The Krell supply base on Europa went dark last night. No alarms, no distress calls, just complete shutdown." Excited murmurs filled the room. An older woman leaned forward. "The ghost ship." Junho nodded. "Who else? That's the 3rd strike this month. They say it's commanded by a woman who escaped Earth during the invasion," said a teenage boy. "My cousin works in the labor camp near the Krell command center." He overheard the aliens talking. "They're scared." Across the solar system, Similar conversations happened in hidden corners of human settlements. The story of the ghost ship grew with each telling. Some said it could teleport. Others claimed it could predict the future. All agreed on one thing. Someone was fighting back. Hundreds of millions of kilometers away, Ju Park floated in Firefly's small bathroom, washing her face with recycled water. She had no idea she had become a legend. "System alert," announced the ship's eye. Krell communications spike detected. Jumu quickly dried her face and pushed herself to the cockpit. "Show me." The display lit up with intercepted Krell transmissions. Her translation software worked through the alien language. What she read made her sit up straight. "Hunter-killer squadrons," she muttered, all focused on the outer planets. After a year of hit-and-run attacks, the Krell had finally recognized the pattern. They no longer believed in equipment failures or coincidences. They were actively hunting her. Ju pulled up the tactical map. 6 specialized Krell combat squadrons were deploying throughout the solar system. These weren't the regular patrols she had grown accustomed to evading. These were elite units with advanced sensors and weapons. "They're looking for me," she said to the empty cockpit. "But they still don't know what they're looking for." The quantum camouflage had kept Firefly completely hidden so far. Yet Ju knew better than to get overconfident. If the Krell committed enough resources, they might eventually get lucky. She studied the deployment pattern of the hunter-killer squadrons. Their search grid focused on the outer planets where most of her strikes had occurred. But there was a gap in their coverage, near Mars, where the massive Krell mothership orbited. "They think I wouldn't dare go there," Ju realized. Right into the heart of their command. A plan began forming in her mind. If the Krell were concentrating their forces on finding her, their central command might be less protected than usual. And the mothership was the key to everything. The center of their operations in the solar system. Ju checked her remaining equipment. Among her supplies were 5 quantum beacons, tiny devices that, once planted, could transmit secure data through subspace, undetectable by conventional sensors. If she could place these inside the mothership, she would have eyes and ears in the center of Krell operations. The journey to Mars took 3 weeks. Ju traveled slowly, conserving energy and maintaining ghost mode continuously. As she approached the red planet, the massive Krell mothership came into view, a structure larger than any human space station ever built. "Impressive," she whispered, studying its layout through Firefly sensors. The mothership was surrounded by a defense grid even more formidable than she had anticipated. But her scans revealed something useful. Regular supply shuttles docked in a specific pattern, creating brief openings in the defensive screen. For 3 days, Ju observed these patterns, calculating her approach. Finally, she saw her chance. "Beginning approach," she told herself, guiding Firefly toward the mothership in the wake of a large supply vessel. The quantum camouflage strained against the powerful scanning beams sweeping the area. Ju held her breath as a defense satellite passed within meters of her position. The seconds stretched like hours until finally, Firefly slipped through the outer defenses. Now came the most dangerous part. Ju needed to physically attach the quantum beacons to the mothership's hull. She suited up in the specialized EVA gear designed for stealth operations. Maintaining ghost mode, she reminded the ship's eye, "No matter what happens." Ju exited through the airlock, tethered to Firefly by a thin carbon fiber line. The 5 quantum beacons were secured to her suit. The vastness of space and the enormous bulk of the mothership made her feel impossibly small. Moving with practiced precision, she propelled herself toward the first target location, a communications node on the outer hull. The node would give her access to internal Krell transmissions. As she worked to attach the first beacon, a patrol of Krell guards in spacesuits passed nearby. Ju froze, her heart pounding. The quantum technology that hid Firefly extended only partially to her suit. If they looked directly at her, the patrol continued past, oblivious. Ju released her breath and finished securing the beacon. One by one, she placed the remaining beacons at strategic points, near the command center. the main engineering section, the fleet coordination hub, and finally, the central database access point. As she returned to Firefly, an alarm suddenly blared across the mothership. For a terrible moment, Juwu thought she had been discovered. But the commotion had nothing to do with her. A hunter-killer squadron was reporting a possible sighting near Neptune. They were chasing shadows while she operated right under their noses. Back inside Firefly, Juwu quickly checked the beacons. All 5 were operational, transmitting data directly to her systems. Already, she could see Krell fleet movements, intercept command communications, and access portions of their tactical database. "This changes everything," she said, scrolling through the flood of information. Among the data, one file caught her attention, a report about increasing resistance activities throughout the solar system. Humans were organizing, inspired by stories of mysterious attacks against Krell installations. The report specifically mentioned rumors of a ghost ship commanded by a lone human who had escaped Earth's fall. The Krell command dismissed these as myths designed to boost human morale, but considered them dangerous nonetheless. Juwu read the report twice, stunned to realize people were telling stories about her. "They've turned me into some kind of legend," she whispered. As Firefly slipped away from Mars, evading the distracted hunter-killer squadrons with ease, Juwu began analyzing the wealth of new intelligence. The quantum beacons would give her unprecedented access to Krell operations, allowing her to coordinate her strikes for maximum effect. More importantly, she now knew she wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. Every victory, no matter how small, gave hope to those still under Krell control. "Not just a ghost," Juwu said as Earth came into view in the distance. "A promise." Juwu stared at the data flowing across her screen with growing excitement. After 3 weeks of analyzing the information from her quantum beacons, she had found something unexpected, a pattern in the Krell communication signals. "Play it again," she told the ship's computer. "Isolate frequency range 42.7 to 43.2. The audio visualization appeared before her. What had initially seemed like random noise now revealed itself as a complex, repeating signal. "It's not just communication," Juwu whispered. "It's coordination." The Krell operated with perfect synchronization because they shared information constantly through a subspace frequency. It wasn't quite a hive mind. Each Krell maintained individual consciousness, but their military efficiency depended on this continuous connection to receive orders and coordinate actions. Juwu ran her fingers through her hair, grown long during her months of solitary warfare. If this frequency were disrupted, she didn't finish the thought aloud. The implications were too enormous. For 3 days, Juwu barely slept, working to modify Firefly's engines. The quantum drive that powered her ship could be reconfigured to emit a synchronized pulse on exactly the right frequency to disrupt the Krell network. The mathematics were complex, but her military training had included advanced physics. On the 4th day, she ran a small test. Firefly emitted a targeted pulse toward a nearby Krell patrol ship. The effect was immediate. The alien vessel began drifting off course, its movements suddenly erratic. After 30 seconds, the ship regained control, but by then, Juwu had all the confirmation she needed. "It works," she said, allowing herself a rare smile. "But the range is limited, and the effect temporary. To truly impact the Krell military, she would need to hit a large concentration of their forces at once. And to do that, she would need to draw them together, something they were too careful to allow under normal circumstances." Juwu checked the strategic map. The hunter-killer squadrons still searched for her throughout the outer planets, but with decreasing urgency. After months without finding her, the Krell were beginning to redirect resources back to controlling Earth. "Time to remind them I exist," Juwu said. She plotted a course for the Kuiper Belt, where the Krell had established a forward base to monitor the outer reaches of the solar system. This base handled long-range communications with the Krell homeworld in another star system. When Firefly arrived, Juwu did something she hadn't done since the invasion began. She partially deactivated the quantum camouflage. For just 3 seconds, Firefly appeared on Krell sensors near their communication array. Then she re-engaged full stealth and moved to a different position. The reaction was immediate. Alarms blared across the base. Patrol ships scrambled. Emergency transmissions flooded the subspace network. First glimpse of the ghost, Ju said, monitoring the chaos from a safe distance. She waited 12 hours, then repeated the process. Another brief appearance, just long enough to be detected, then vanishing again. Over the next week, Ju led the Krell on a frustrating chase through the Kuiper Belt. Each glimpse was calculated to suggest she was searching for something specific, a weakness in their outer defenses. The Krell response escalated with each sighting. More hunter-killer squadrons were diverted from their regular patrols, then support vessels, then capital ships. Through her quantum beacons in the mothership, Ju watched the Krell command meetings. Their frustration was evident. The elusive human vessel had embarrassed them for too long. The Supreme Commander ordered a full-scale operation to capture or destroy the ghost ship once and for all. That's right, Ju said, watching as nearly 40% of the Krell fleet was redirected to the Kuiper Belt. Bring everyone to the party. She made one final appearance, this time near Pluto, allowing herself to be detected for a full 5 seconds, long enough for the Krell to get a complete sensor reading of Firefly. Then she accelerated toward a pre-selected position, a dense region of the Kuiper Belt where countless ice bodies and asteroids formed a natural maze. This area, designated KB 372, was far from any human settlements or important Krell installations. The trap was set. Jiwoo checked Firefly's modified engine. The power requirements for the disruption pulse would drain her reserves to critical levels. She would have one chance to get this right. Final preparations complete, she reported in her log. If this works, it's the beginning of the end for Krell control. If not, she didn't finish the thought. Through her mothership beacons, Jiwoo watched the Krell fleet spread out to surround KB 372. Over 200 vessels, from tiny patrol craft to massive destroyers, formed a sphere around her position. Their strategy was simple: close the net slowly, leaving no path for escape. The Supreme Commander himself had joined the operation from a command vessel, eager to witness the capture of the troublesome human ship. Jiwoo waited until the fleet had fully committed to the trap. At minimum safe distance, she activated Firefly's modified engine. The ship shuddered as energy built up in the quantum drive. Initiating pulse in 3, 2, 1. A wave of invisible energy expanded outward from Firefly, precisely tuned to the Krell coordination frequency. As it reached the encircling fleet, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Across 200 ships, Krell officers suddenly found themselves cut off from the command network. Without continuous guidance, their rigid training became a liability. Ships veered off course. Some fired weapons randomly. Others froze completely, awaiting orders that couldn't come. Through her mothership beacons, Jiwoo watched in amazement as confusion spread even to the central command. The disruption had traveled through the network faster than anticipated, affecting Krell forces throughout the solar system. Better than expected, Jiwoo whispered. She navigated Firefly carefully through the disorganized fleet. Some ships were beginning to regain basic functions as their crews adapted to the communication loss, but coordination remained impossible. As she slipped past the command vessel, Jiwoo sent a simple message on an open frequency, her first direct communication to the Krell. One human, one ship. Remember this day. The disruption would be temporary, perhaps hours, not days. But it had proven a critical point. The Krell's greatest strength was also their greatest vulnerability. Jiwoo set course back toward Earth, her mind already planning the next phase. The quantum beacons continued feeding her information about the confused aftermath of her attack. The Krell were scrambling to understand what had happened and how a single human vessel could cause such damage. Most importantly, resistance cells throughout the solar system would see that the mighty Krell fleet could be thrown into chaos. The time for coordinated action was approaching. The turning point, Ju said to herself as Firefly accelerated away from the scattered Krull ships. Now we take back what's ours. Ju's fingers moved quickly across Firefly's communication panel as she prepared the most important transmission of her life. After 18 months of fighting alone, the time had come to share her discovery with others. Message encoding complete, the ship's AI announced. Ready to transmit on secure channels. Send it, Ju said quietly. The transmission contained detailed specifications for creating disruption devices that could interfere with the Krull coordination frequency. Simple enough that resistance groups could build them with salvaged parts, but powerful enough to disable Krull forces in their local areas. She had spent weeks simplifying the design after her successful test in the Kuiper Belt. The message also included a precise time for coordinated action, exactly 72 hours from now. Across the solar system, hidden resistance leaders received Juwoo's transmission. In underground bunkers on Earth, secret bases on Mars, and hidden outposts on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, humans began building the devices according to her specifications. Juwoo monitored the preparations through encrypted channels. The response exceeded her expectations. 27 resistance cells confirmed they were ready. Together, they covered every major Krull installation in the solar system. As the deadline approached, Juwoo guided Firefly toward her most dangerous target yet, the Krull High Command vessel orbiting Earth. This massive ship housed the Dominion's Leadership Council, the 7 highest-ranking Krull who directed the occupation. Thanks to her quantum beacons, Juwoo knew the vessel's layout in perfect detail. She had identified a maintenance shaft that would allow her to reach the central command chamber undetected. Final system check, she told the ship's AI as Earth grew larger in her viewport. All systems operational. Quantum camouflage at maximum efficiency. Juwoo touched the small pendant hanging around her neck, a gift from her father before the invasion. For luck, she whispered. As Firefly approached the high command vessel, Juwoo received confirmation signals from resistance groups throughout the system. Everyone was in position. The devices were ready. 6 hours before the deadline, Juwoo docked Firefly to the underside of the high command vessel, attaching to a rarely used maintenance port. The quantum camouflage extended to cover the connection point, making both ships invisible to Krull sensors. Juwoo pulled on her stealth suit and checked her equipment one last time. She carried a small disruption device, a data tablet connected to her quantum beacons, and a universal translator. No weapons. They would be useless against the Krull guards anyway. If I'm not back in 3 hours, activate the emergency protocol, she instructed the AI. Juwoo moved through the maintenance shaft silently, following the path displayed on her tablet. The tight space was barely large enough for a human, designed for the robotic maintenance drones the Krull preferred to use. Twice she had to freeze as Krull security patrols passed nearby, their heavy footsteps vibrating through the metal walls. Each time, they continued past without detecting her presence. After 40 minutes of careful navigation, Juwoo reached a ventilation panel directly above the command chamber. Through the slats, she could see the 7 members of the Leadership Council gathered around a holographic display of the solar system. The Supreme Commander was speaking. Our forces have recovered from the communication disruption. The human vessel has not been detected since the incident, we believe. An alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship. The council members looked up in confusion. The countdown had reached 0. Across the solar system, resistance groups had activated their disruption devices simultaneously. Through her tablet, Juwoo watched as reports flooded into the command chamber. Krull forces everywhere were losing communication. Resistance fighters were attacking key installations. Imprisoned humans were rising up against their guards. The council chamber erupted in chaos as the members shouted orders that couldn't be properly transmitted to their forces. This was her moment. Juwoo removed the ventilation panel and dropped into the chamber. The sudden appearance of a human in their most secure location froze the Krull leaders in shock. "My name is Commander Juwoo Park," she announced, her translator converting her words to the Krull language. I represent what remains of humanity." The Supreme Commander recovered first, signaling guards to seize her, but Ju held up her hand. "I wouldn't," she said calmly. "The disruption affecting your forces. I control it. And this is happening everywhere in your empire right now." She activated her tablet, displaying feeds from her quantum beacons throughout the Krell network. Each screen showed similar scenes of confusion and uprising. "Impossible," the Supreme Commander said. "You are one human." "One human was all it took," Ju replied. "One human to find the flaw in your perfect system. Your ships can't coordinate. Your troops can't receive orders. And now, humans everywhere are taking back what's ours." She stepped forward, facing the Council directly. "You thought humans were weak because we don't share your hive mind connection. But that's our strength. We think independently. We adapt. We survive." The chamber fell silent as the reality of their situation sank in. The Supreme Commander exchanged glances with the other council members. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "Withdrawal," Ju said simply. "All Krell forces leave the solar system. Immediately." "You expect us to abandon everything based on a temporary communication disruption?" another council member demanded. Ju smiled slightly. "The disruption isn't temporary anymore. We've modified the technology. As long as humans maintain these devices, your forces cannot function effectively in our system." She showed them live feeds of human resistance fighters deploying permanent disruption beacons on key planets and moons. "You have a choice," Ju continued. "Stay and fight a war you can't win against an enemy you can't coordinate against, or leave with your fleet mostly intact." For 3 tense minutes, the council members conferred among themselves. Ju stood quietly, monitoring the uprising through her tablet. Reports showed human forces successfully capturing Krell installations across Mars and the outer moons. Finally, the Supreme Commander turned to her. "We will withdraw," he said, his translator making his voice sound flat and emotionless. "But know this, human, the Dominion does not forget." "Neither do we," Ju replied. Within hours, the withdrawal order spread throughout the Krell forces. Ships began disengaging from orbit around occupied planets. The massive mothership broke formation and set course for the outer system. Ju returned to Firefly and transmitted the news to resistance leaders. "Victory is ours. The Krell are leaving." As she watched the Krell fleet depart from Earth orbit, Ju allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had happened. For 18 months, she had been a ghost haunting the invaders. Now she could be human again. 3 days later, Firefly landed at the former Krell headquarters in what had once been called New Sol. A crowd of thousands waited to greet the commander of the ghost ship they had heard so much about. As Ju stepped from her ship, a cheer erupted that seemed to shake the ground. People pressed forward, reaching out to touch her, to confirm she was real and not just a legend. An old man pushed through the crowd and stood before her, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Admiral Kine," Ju whispered in disbelief. He nodded, embracing her tightly. "You did it, Commander. One human, one ship." "And they never saw it coming," Ju finished, smiling as she looked up at Earth's clear blue sky. "Free once more. The end."